of social scientists all over the world have taken this very hard-headed look at what motivates people to do good work. And what they found is that the traditional kind of motivators, money, but but other things, promotions, rewards, bonuses, particularly if they are what I call if-then rewards. If you do this, then you get that. Those if-then rewards are great for simple work, not so great for creative work. It's not even a close call in the science. So money does matter in a way. Money is actually important. You got to pay people enough. You have to treat people fairly. But once you pay people enough, if you really want innovation, the secret is not hanging out more sweets or carrots or money or promotions, but giving people intrinsic value in their job, a sense of autonomy, the capacity to make progress, and a sense of purpose. Let's take a step back and talk about our notions of management. Okay, management is it really just a technology? It's a technology for organizing people into productive capacities. It's a very old technology. It's a technology from the 1850s, and it's really about getting people to comply, to get people to do what you want them to do, the way you want them to do it. But what we need some compliance today, but what we need more than anything else is engagement. We need people to be engaged. And the way that human beings engage is not by being managed. It's not by being controlled. It's by getting there on their own. And so autonomy means giving people some amount of sovereignty, some amount of control over what they do, when they do it, who they do it with. So if people have a modest amount of self-direction, they can engage more. And there's some very interesting practices that seem weird, that seem bizarre, that are actually fostering that kind of behavior. Human beings like to get better at things. They like to make progress. Why? Because they like to get better at things. It's inherently satisfying. When people make progress, when people do better, when people get better at something, it's inherently satisfying. And that's a big part of what it is to be a human being. It's a big part of productivity and engagement at work. And at least in my view, it's mostly ignored inside of companies. And if we recast the workplace just a little bit, help put people in positions where they make progress, help people see the progress they make, help people set their own goals, enrich the feedback environment considerably, then I think people will just do better work. We tend to think that management is about telling people how to do things. Here's how you do it the right way. But we don't talk enough about why. Why are we doing these things in the first place? How does what you do contribute to a larger whole? And I think this is actually an easy problem to solve. If we talk a little bit more about why and a little bit less about how, and if we connect what we do each day to a larger purpose, then the evidence is very clear that that boosts performance. I mean, there are a lot of really, really interesting examples of companies that are doing, particularly on autonomy, that are doing really interesting things. So let's take a company like the American company Netflix, very disruptive company. Netflix, like most companies have a vacation policy, a holiday policy. You get 3 weeks of vacation, 4 weeks of vacation. Netflix's vacation policy, they don't have one. People can take as much vacation as they want, whenever they want it. Full autonomy over when you go to work. There's another example of a practice that's emerging called the results-only work environment, ROWE, where people don't have schedules. They don't have to be in the office at a certain time. They don't have to be in the office at any time. They have to get their work done, but when they do it, it's completely up to them. If you look at another one of my favorite examples is an Australian company called Atlassian, software company, and they do something really cool. Once a quarter, they say to their software developers on a Thursday afternoon, go work on anything you want. Do it the way you want, do it with whoever you want, full autonomy. The only thing we ask is that you show what you've created to the rest of the company on Friday afternoon in this fun meeting. They call these things FedEx days because you have to deliver something overnight. This one day of autonomy has led to a whole array of fixes for existing companies, for existing products, a whole array of ideas for new products, improvements to internal processes that had otherwise never emerged. So this is not, it's a very different approach to motivation. It's not saying, hey, if you do something good, I'll give you a cookie. It's saying, we hire good people want to do good work. Maybe one way to have good people do good work is to get out of their way for a day. And so there are a lot of these really, really interesting emerging practices that are not about controlling people, but about providing autonomy. One of the companies that did the results-only work environment is a very traditional company. It's a company called Best Buy. Here we are at the Best Buy Theater. It's a big American retailer. Now, they don't do this in their stores, but in their corporate headquarters in Richfield, Minnesota, 90% of the employees there don't have schedules. They don't have to, you know, most people on Sunday night say, oh no, I have to go into the office on Monday morning. They don't have to go into the office on Monday morning. They have to get their work done. If they don't get their work done, it's all over for them. But they can show up whenever they want. So this is a big company, public company, that made that kind of transition. Now, that said, it's harder in established companies than in entrepreneurial companies. Autonomy doesn't mean I do whatever I want and to hell with everybody else. One of the interesting things going on right now is steps to allow people some autonomy over their team. So let me give you a couple of interesting examples of this. I mean, Tony Hsieh talked about how if the shuttle bus driver who picks you up for your interview at Zappos doesn't like you, you don't get hired. So everybody has a say in who gets hired. And there are a number of retailers like that, where the manager will bring somebody in, that person will work, say, for 30 days, but the team decides whether that person stays. So that's giving people, so that's autonomy, but autonomy over your team. Facebook does something really interesting in that they hire engineers, they put them through this Facebook boot camp. The engineers go and meet with various product teams, various technology teams, and then at the end of that 2 or 3 week period, the individual decides where she wants to work. So the company hires the talent, but the talent picks the team. So I think it's very, you know, the most powerful teams in any kind of enterprise are teams that are self-directed, not teams that are managed by somebody else, but teams that have their own autonomy. And so teams themselves can be autonomous and self-directed, and the fashioning of teams can be done in an autonomous way. And that's just demonstrably more effective. As we have a set of motivators that were really built for 19th century, even 20th century work. And they're very good for things like turning the same screw the same way on an assembly line, or stuffing envelopes, or that kind of work. But very few people are doing that kind of work. People are doing work that requires judgment, critical thinking, creativity, innovation, and for that kind of work, those kind of motivational mechanisms are just not effective. They just don't work very well. And so I think eventually more and more organizations are going to go in this direction. Now, it might, I don't know whether it's going to become widespread in 2 years, 10 years, or 20 years, but I think that it's inevitable. I mean, I think that the nature of the conceptual age, which is built more on these right brain, artistic, empathic abilities, calls for a different approach to motivation. That is, you can't, I mean, if you have a team of artists, artists are not going to respond. I mean, it seems intuitive, but there's also actual social science on this. If you want artists to do great work, you don't treat them like envelope stuffers. You don't say, I'll pay you a $10,000 bonus for a great painting, give you really tight deadlines, monitor your work. That is not how artists do things. And more of us are operating like artists. We're creating things, we're solving complex problems. And what artists need is freedom, security, some amount of kind of base security, and freedom to do things, and the capacity to do things their own way. And that's the kind of workplace arrangements we need, rather than trying to perfect an outdated model. Much of this science has been taught in business schools. It's been taught, you know, Douglas McGregor and Edward Deci and Herzberg has been taught in business schools and then mostly ignored. So I think that, you know, in many ways, as Roger Martin, one of your other folks here at this event, has said in the past, business schools really teach the ability to use quantitative analysis to decide between known options. And that's an important skill, but it's not the only skill. And that's not the skill that leads to great innovation. It's not the skill that leads to Twitter. It's not the skill that leads to the iPad. It's not the skill that leads to breakthroughs in science. What leads to breakthroughs in science in any kind of field is hiring great people and putting them in an environment where they have some freedom, where they get feedback on what they're doing and they show up and they know why they're doing stuff in the first place.